Maria Santos looked at the big house in front of her. It was the biggest house she had ever seen. The walls were white like fresh snow. There were many windows that sparkled in the afternoon sun. She carried her small bag of cleaning things in one hand. Her other hand held the keys to the back door. She had cleaned many houses before, but this house was different. This was the Henderson house. Everyone in town knew about the Henderson family. They had lots of money. They owned 3 big stores in the city. Mrs. Henderson was always in the newspaper. She went to fancy parties and gave money to help poor people. Maria walked to the back door. She always used the back door when she came to clean. The front door was for important people, not for people like her. She put the key in the lock and turned it slowly. The door opened with a soft click, but something was wrong. The house was not quiet like it usually was. She could hear voices. Lots of voices. There was music playing, too. It sounded like the kind of music rich people liked. Soft and slow, Maria stepped inside. The kitchen was full of people wearing black and white clothes. They were not the family. They were workers like her, but they looked different. Their clothes were clean and new. They moved fast around the kitchen. Some carried silver plates. Others carried glasses that looked expensive. "Excuse me," said a woman with short gray hair. She wore a black dress with a white apron. "Are you the cleaning lady?" "Yes," Maria said. "I am Maria. I come every Tuesday to clean." The woman looked worried. "Oh no, Mrs. Henderson forgot to call you. We are having a big party tonight. A charity dinner. There are 100 people coming." Maria did not know what to say. She needed this job. She needed the money. Her mother was sick. The medicine cost a lot of money. Every dollar was important. "I can come back tomorrow," Maria said. No, the woman said quickly. "You can still work. But be very careful. Stay away from the guests. Clean only the rooms they are not using. My name is Helen. I am in charge of all the workers tonight." Helen walked fast through the kitchen. Maria followed her. They went through a long hallway. The walls had big paintings in gold frames. The floor was made of wood that shined like a mirror. "The guests will be in the main rooms," Helen said. "The living room, the dining room, and the ballroom. You can clean the upstairs bedrooms. And maybe the library if no one is there." They stopped at a big door. Helen opened it a little bit. Maria could see into a huge room. There were round tables everywhere. Each table had white cloth on it. There were flowers in the middle of each table. Red roses and white lilies. The smell was sweet and strong. People were walking around the room. The men wore black suits that looked very expensive. Their shoes were shiny and new. The women wore long dresses in many colors. Blue like the ocean, red like blood, green like grass in spring. Their jewelry sparkled under the big lights that hung from the ceiling. "See?" Helen whispered. "Very fancy people. Very important people. They give money to help poor children. Mrs. Henderson raises thousands of dollars every year." Maria watched the people. They looked so clean and perfect. Their hair was done by expensive hair people. Their teeth were white and straight. They spoke in quiet voices and laughed softly. They held glasses with golden liquid in them. She looked down at her own clothes. She wore a simple blue dress. It was old but clean. Her shoes were worn but comfortable. She had tied her black hair back with a rubber band. Her hands were rough from cleaning so many houses. "Come on," Helen said. "Let me show you where to start." They went up a big staircase. The steps were covered with red carpet. There were more paintings on the walls. Pictures of old people in fancy clothes. Maybe they were the Henderson family from long ago. The upstairs hallway was very long. There were many doors on both sides. Helen opened the first door. "This is the guest bedroom," she said. "Just dust everything. Change the towels in the bathroom. Make sure everything looks perfect." Maria nodded. She had cleaned this room before. It was bigger than her whole apartment. The bed was huge. It had 4 posts that went up to the ceiling. The blankets were made of silk. They probably cost more than Maria made in a whole month. "I will check on you later," Helen said. "Remember, stay quiet. Do not bother the guests." Helen left. Maria was alone. She opened her bag and took out her cleaning things. A bottle of spray for dusting, some clean rags, a small vacuum cleaner. She started to dust the table next to the bed. The wood was dark and smooth. There was a small clock on it made of gold. Next to the clock was a picture of Mr. and Mrs. Henderson. They were standing in front of a big boat. They looked happy and rich. Maria worked slowly and carefully. She did not want to break anything. Everything in this house cost more money than she had ever seen. If she broke something, she would have to pay for it. That could take months or even years. She could hear the party downstairs. The voices got louder as more people came. Sometimes she heard laughter. It was the kind of laughter that came from people who had no worries. People who never had to choose between buying food or paying for medicine. Maria finished the first bedroom. She moved to the next one. This room was painted light pink. It had lots of pictures of flowers on the walls. The bed had a cover made of white lace. It looked like a room for a princess. As she dusted the dresser, Maria thought about her own life. She woke up every morning at 5 o'clock. She took the bus to different houses around the city. She cleaned bathrooms and kitchens and bedrooms. She worked hard for every dollar. When she got home, she took care of her mother. Her mother had been sick for 2 years. The doctor said she needed expensive medicine. Without it, she would get worse. Maria worked 7 days a week to pay for everything. Sometimes Maria felt sad about her life. She remembered when she was young. She had dreams then. Big dreams. But life had other plans for her. Now she just tried to get through each day. She moved to the bathroom. It was bigger than her kitchen at home. The bathtub was huge and white. The sink was made of marble. There were gold handles on everything. Even the soap was fancy. It smelled like expensive perfume. Maria cleaned everything carefully. She made sure there were no spots on the mirror. She folded the towels in a perfect way. She put new soap next to the sink. The sounds from the party were getting louder. She could hear music now. Someone was playing a piano. The music was beautiful but sad. It reminded Maria of something from long ago, something she tried not to think about. She finished the bathroom and moved to the next room. This was the biggest bedroom. It must be where Mr. and Mrs. Henderson slept. The bed was enormous. It had curtains around it like beds in old movies. The dresser was covered with bottles of perfume and expensive jewelry. Maria dusted everything very carefully. She did not touch the jewelry. She did not want anyone to think she was trying to steal something. She had heard stories about cleaning ladies who lost their jobs because someone thought they took something. As she worked, she thought about the people downstairs. They were eating food that cost more than her weekly salary. They were drinking wine that was older than she was. They talked about their trips to other countries and their expensive cars, but they were also giving money to help poor children. Helen had said they raised thousands of dollars. Maybe some of that money would help kids like she used to be, kids who had dreams but no money to make them come true. Maria finished the bedroom and looked at her watch. She had been working for 2 hours. The party was still going strong downstairs. She could hear more people arriving. Cars were stopping outside. Doors were slamming. She decided to try the library. Helen had said maybe she could clean it if no one was there. Maria walked down the hallway to a door at the end. She opened it slowly and looked inside. The library was empty. It was a beautiful room filled with books from floor to ceiling. There was a big desk in the middle. Comfortable chairs were placed around the room. It was quiet and peaceful. Maria went inside and started to dust the books. There were so many of them. Books about history and science and art. Books in different languages. Some of the books looked very old and valuable. As she worked, Maria felt calm for the first time all day. She loved books. When she was young, she spent hours in the public library. She read everything she could find. Books took her to different places and different times. They helped her forget about being poor, but that was long ago. Now she was too tired to read when she got home. She just wanted to sleep so she could wake up and work again the next day. The sounds from the party seemed far away now. Maria continued cleaning, lost in her thoughts. She did not know that soon. Her life was about to change in a way she never expected. Maria finished cleaning the library and walked back down the hallway. The party sounds were much louder now. She could hear people talking and laughing. Glasses were clinking together. Someone was making a speech about helping children. Helen appeared at the top of the stairs. She looked busy and a little stressed. "Maria, you are doing a good job," Helen said, "but I need you to do something else now. Can you help clean the ballroom?" Some guests spilled wine on the floor, but wait until they move to the dining room for dinner. "Yes, I can do that," Maria said. "Good, they will eat dinner in 30 minutes. Then you can go in and clean up." "Just be very quiet and very fast," Helen hurried away. Maria waited at the top of the stairs. She could see part of the ballroom from where she stood. The room was full of people in beautiful clothes. They stood in small groups talking and drinking. The ballroom was the most beautiful room in the house. Maria had cleaned it many times before, but always when it was empty. Tonight it was alive with people and music and light. After 30 minutes, Helen came back. "Okay, they are going to dinner now. You can go in and clean, but hurry. They will come back in 1 hour for dancing and more speeches." Maria walked down the stairs and went to the ballroom door. She waited until the last guest left the room. Then she went inside with her cleaning things. The ballroom was huge. The ceiling was very high. Big windows went from the floor to the ceiling. Heavy curtains hung beside each window. The curtains were made of gold fabric that sparkled in the light. In the middle of the ceiling hung the biggest light Maria had ever seen. It was made of thousands of pieces of glass. Each piece caught the light and threw it around the room like stars. The floor was made of wood that was polished until it shined like water. Around the edges of the room were small tables and chairs. Each table had flowers and candles on it, but in the corner of the room was something that made Maria stop and stare. It was a piano, but not just any piano. It was the biggest, most beautiful piano she had ever seen. The piano was very old. Maria could tell because of the way it was made. The wood was dark and rich. It had curves and designs carved into it. The legs were thick and strong. On top of the piano were pictures in silver frames. But as Maria got closer, she could see that something was wrong with the piano. Some of the white keys were yellow with age. A few of the black keys were cracked. One key near the middle was missing completely. The piano bench was old too. The leather on top was worn and cracked. It looked like no one had sat on it for a long time. Maria found the wine stain on the floor near the piano. She got down on her knees and started to clean it. As she worked, she looked up at the piano. Even though it was old and broken, it was still beautiful. She had seen pianos like this in books. They were called grand pianos. They cost more money than most people made in their whole lives. This one probably cost as much as a house. As Maria cleaned, she heard footsteps. Mrs. Henderson came into the room with 3 other women. They were all dressed in expensive gowns. Their jewelry sparkled in the light from the big chandelier. "Oh, excuse me," Mrs. Henderson said when she saw Maria. "I did not know anyone was in here." "I am just cleaning the wine stain," Maria said quietly. "I will be done soon." No, take your time," Mrs. Henderson said. She turned to her friends. "I wanted to show you my mother's piano." The 3 women walked over to the piano. Maria tried to make herself small and invisible. She kept cleaning, but she could hear every word they said. "It is beautiful, Catherine," said one woman. She had gray hair and wore a blue dress. "How old is it?" "It was made in 1925, Mrs. Henderson said. "My mother bought it when she was young. She was a wonderful piano player. She played concerts all over the country." "Does anyone in your family still play?" asked another woman. She wore a red dress and had diamonds around her neck. Mrs. Henderson laughed, but it was not a happy laugh. "Oh no, none of us learned. My mother tried to teach me when I was little, but I was not interested. I wanted to play outside and ride horses." "That is too bad," said the 3rd woman. She wore a green dress and had very white teeth. "What a waste of such a beautiful instrument." "Yes, it is," Mrs. Henderson said sadly. "The piano has not been played in 15 years. Not since my mother died. We keep meaning to have it fixed and tuned, but we never get around to it." "Can it still be played?" the woman in blue asked. "I suppose so," Mrs. Henderson said, "but several keys are broken. And it has not been tuned in so long that it sounds terrible. Listen to this." Mrs. Henderson pressed one of the white keys. The sound that came out was flat and sad. It did not sound like music at all, see? "It sounds awful," Mrs. Henderson said. "Sometimes I think we should just get rid of it. But it was my mother's. I cannot bring myself to sell it." "Maybe you could donate it to a school," the woman in red suggested. "Some music teacher could fix it up." "Maybe," Mrs. Henderson said. "But look at it. It would cost thousands of dollars to make it good again. The keys need to be replaced. It needs to be tuned. The wood needs to be polished. It is probably not worth the money." Maria kept cleaning, but she was listening to every word. She wanted to tell them that the piano was still beautiful, that it could still make music if someone who knew how to play it tried. But she stayed quiet. Cleaning ladies did not talk to rich people about pianos. "It is so sad," the woman in green said. "Your mother was so talented. I remember going to her concerts when I was young. She played like an angel. Yes, she did, Mrs. Henderson said. Her voice was soft and sad. She wanted all of us children to learn music. But we were too busy with other things. Sports and parties and friends. We thought music was boring. Do you ever regret not learning? The woman in blue asked. Every day, Mrs. Henderson said, especially when I look at this piano. It sits here like a beautiful statue, pretty to look at but useless. The women stood quietly for a moment looking at the piano. Maria finished cleaning the wine stain and started to put her things away. She tried not to make any noise. Well, at least it looks nice in the room, the woman in red said. It gives the ballroom character. Yes, that is what we tell ourselves, Mrs. Henderson said. It is a very expensive decoration. Maybe one of your grandchildren will want to learn, the woman in green suggested. Mrs. Henderson laughed again. Have you met my grandchildren? All they care about are their phones and video games. Music is the last thing on their minds. That is how children are today, the woman in blue said. Everything is electronic. No one appreciates real instruments anymore. It is a different world, Mrs. Henderson agreed. Sometimes I wonder what my mother would think if she could see how we live now. Everything is so fast and loud. Her music was slow and beautiful. What kind of music did she play? The woman in red asked. Classical music mostly, Mrs. Henderson said. Chopin and Mozart and Beethoven. She said classical music was like having a conversation with the greatest minds in history. That is a beautiful way to think about it, the woman in green said. Yes, she was a poet as well as a musician, Mrs. Henderson said. She wrote little poems about each piece she played. She said music was not just notes on a page, it was feelings and memories and dreams. Maria had finished cleaning, but she did not want to leave. She loved hearing about Mrs. Henderson's mother. She sounded like someone Maria would have liked to meet. I wish I could hear her play one more time, Mrs. Henderson said quietly. Sometimes I dream that I come down here and she is sitting at the piano, playing one of her favorite pieces. When I wake up, the house feels so quiet. The women stood in silence for a moment. Maria could see tears in Mrs. Henderson's eyes. Well, the woman in blue said finally, we should get back to the dinner. People will be looking for us. Yes, you are right, Mrs. Henderson said. She wiped her eyes with a tissue. I am sorry for getting so sad. I just miss her sometimes. Do not apologize, the woman in red said. She sounds like she was a wonderful person. She was, Mrs. Henderson said. She was the best person I ever knew. The four women started to walk toward the door. As they passed Maria, Mrs. Henderson stopped. Thank you for cleaning up, she said kindly. I hope we did not bother you with our talking. No, not at all, Maria said. I was just finishing. Mrs. Henderson smiled and followed her friends out of the room. Maria was alone with the piano again. She walked over to it and looked at it closely. Even with its broken keys and old wood, she could see how beautiful it must have been when it was new. She could imagine Mrs. Henderson's mother sitting at the bench, her fingers dancing over the keys. Maria reached out and gently touched one of the good keys. She pressed it softly, and a clear note rang out in the empty room. It was not perfectly in tune, but it was still music. She looked around to make sure no one was watching. Then she pressed another key and another. Even broken and old, the piano wanted to sing. Maria thought about her own mother lying sick in her small bed at home. She thought about all the things her mother had wanted to do but never could because they did not have enough money. She thought about dreams that got lost along the way, about music that stopped playing, about pianos that sat silent in beautiful rooms. Maria gathered her cleaning things and walked toward the door. But she stopped and looked back at the piano one more time. In that moment, she made a promise to herself. Someday, somehow, she would. Maria had just finished putting her cleaning things away when she heard voices in the hallway. The dinner was over. The guests were coming back to the ballroom for dancing and more speeches. She tried to leave quickly, but the door opened before she could reach it. People started coming into the room. Maria moved to the side and tried to make herself invisible. The ballroom filled up fast. The guests looked happy and relaxed. Their faces were red from wine and good food. They talked louder now than they had before dinner. Maria looked for another way out, but there were people everywhere. She was trapped in the corner near the piano. She stood very still and hoped no one would notice her. A man with gray hair and a big belly walked over to the piano. He wore an expensive black suit and a gold watch. His face was red and he smelled like wine. "Look at this old thing," he said to his friend. Catherine told us about it at dinner. It belonged to her mother. His friend came over. He was younger, but just as well dressed. Can it still be played? He asked. Supposedly, the first man said, but it sounds terrible. Listen to this, he pressed a key hard. The sound was flat and ugly. Both men laughed. That is awful, the younger man said. Why do they keep it? Sentimental reasons, the first man said. Rich people love to keep broken old things. Makes them feel cultured. More people gathered around the piano. They all wanted to hear the broken keys and laugh about the sound. Someone should play us a song, said a woman with too much makeup. She wore a dress covered in sparkles that hurt Maria's eyes. Who knows how to play piano? Asked another man. He had a mustache and talked very loud. Not me, said the woman. I took lessons when I was little, but I was terrible. Same here, said another person. My mother made me practice, but I hated it. Classical music is so boring anyway, said a young man with slicked back hair. Give me rock and roll any day. Everyone laughed and agreed. They talked about how old-fashioned piano music was, how nobody listened to it anymore, how it was a waste of time to learn. Maria felt sad listening to them. These people had money to take piano lessons when they were young. They had pianos in their houses, but they thought music was boring and stupid. A man named Richard Ashford was standing with the group. Maria knew his name because she had seen his picture in the newspaper. He owned several restaurants in the city. He was known for being mean to his workers. Richard had been drinking a lot of wine at dinner. His face was very red and he was talking louder than everyone else. You know what we need? Richard said with a big smile. We need some entertainment. Someone should play this old piano for us. But nobody here knows how to play, said the woman with sparkles. Are you sure about that? Richard said. He looked around the room with mean eyes. Maybe someone here has hidden talents. His eyes stopped on Maria. She was still standing in the corner, trying not to be seen. But Richard had noticed her. What about our cleaning lady? Richard said, pointing at Maria. I bet she knows how to play. Everyone turned to look at Maria. She felt her face get hot with embarrassment. Her heart started beating fast. Oh, come on, Richard, said the woman with sparkles. Leave the poor girl alone. No, I am serious, Richard said. He walked over to Maria with a big smile that was not kind. You look like you might be musical. Am I right? Maria shook her head quickly. No, sir. I do not play piano. I am just here to clean. Oh, do not be modest, Richard said loudly. He wanted everyone to hear him. I have a good feeling about you. I bet you have been dying to try this piano all night. Really, I do not play, Maria said. Her voice was quiet and scared, but Richard was not listening. He had an idea for a joke and he thought it would be very funny. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard announced to the whole room, I would like to present our evening's entertainment. Our cleaning lady is going to play piano for us. People started gathering around. Some looked uncomfortable, but others seemed interested in the show. They had been drinking wine all night and this seemed like it might be fun. Richard, stop it, said an older woman with kind eyes. You are embarrassing her. Embarrassing her? Richard said with fake surprise. I am giving her a chance to shine. This could be her big moment, he turned back to Maria. Come on, do not be shy. Just play us one little song. It does not have to be good. We just want to hear what this old piano sounds like. I really cannot, Maria said. She was shaking now. I need to finish my work and go home. Your work can wait, Richard said. He was enjoying this. 5 minutes. Just one song. What harm could it do? More people had gathered around now. Maria felt like she was surrounded. Everyone was looking at her and waiting to see what she would do. Play something classical, said the man with the mustache. Something fancy and old-fashioned. Or maybe a children's song, said another person. Something simple. I bet she knows Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, said the young man with slicked back hair. Everyone laughed. Maria felt tears starting in her eyes. She wanted to run away, but there were too many people around her. She was trapped. Please, she said quietly. I really do not play piano. I just clean houses. Oh, come on, Richard said. Do not be so modest. I have a good feeling about you. You look like you have music in your soul. He said this in a mocking way, like he was making fun of her. Some people in the crowd laughed. Richard, enough, said Mrs. Henderson. She had just arrived and saw what was happening. Leave Maria alone. She's here to work, not to entertain us. Catherine, you are no fun, Richard said. I am just trying to liven up the party. Besides, your piano needs someone to play it. It has been sitting here silent for years. If you want music, I can turn on the sound system, Mrs. Henderson said. That is not the same thing, Richard insisted. We want live music. We want to hear this beautiful old piano sing again. He looked around at the crowd. Who agrees with me? Should not this piano be played tonight? Some people nodded and clapped. They were caught up in Richard's enthusiasm and the wine they had been drinking. You see, Richard said to Maria, everyone wants to hear you play. You would be doing us all a favor. But I told you I do not know how, Maria said. Her voice was getting smaller and smaller. Then this is the perfect time to learn, Richard said with a cruel smile. What is the worst that could happen? You press some keys and make some noise. We are not expecting Carnegie Hall. Everyone laughed at this joke. Maria felt smaller and smaller with each laugh. Come on, Richard said. He reached out and took Maria's arm. I will walk you over to the piano. You can just sit down and try it. No pressure. Maria tried to pull her arm away, but Richard's grip was firm. Please let me go, she said. Just one song, Richard said. Then you can go back to your cleaning. I promise. The crowd was getting excited now. They started saying things like, come on and just try it and it will be fun. Maria looked around desperately. She saw Mrs. Henderson looking worried, but Mrs. Henderson did not want to make a scene in front of her guests. I really cannot, Maria said one more time. Of course you can, Richard said. Anyone can hit piano keys. It is not rocket science. He started pulling her toward the piano. The crowd followed, chattering excitedly. This should be interesting, said the woman with sparkles. I wonder if she even knows where middle C is, said the man with the mustache. This is going to be painful to listen to, said someone. Else, that is the point, Richard said with a mean laugh. Sometimes the best entertainment is the worst performance. Maria felt sick to her stomach. These people thought this was funny. They wanted to watch her fail and make fool of herself. As they reached the piano, Richard finally let go of her arm. There you go, he said. Your stage awaits. The piano bench looked huge and scary to Maria. The keys looked like teeth in a giant mouth waiting to bite her. Go ahead, Richard said. Sit down. Do not be afraid. It is just a piano. Maria looked at all the faces around her. Some looked excited. Some looked uncomfortable. Some looked mean. But they were all watching her, waiting for her to make a mistake. She had never felt so alone and scared in her whole life. But she had no choice. She could not run away. She could not hide. She had to sit down at the piano and try to play something. With shaking hands, Maria reached for the piano bench. She was about to discover that sometimes the worst moments in life can become the most amazing ones. Maria stood in front of the piano bench like it was a monster waiting to eat her. Her hands were shaking so much she could not control them. Her heart was beating so fast she thought everyone could hear it. The crowd of people around her was getting bigger. More guests had heard about the entertainment and came to watch. They formed a circle around the piano. Maria felt like an animal in a zoo. Go ahead, sit down, Richard said with his cruel smile. The piano will not bite you. Some people in the crowd laughed. Maria wanted to disappear into the floor. Maybe this is not a good idea, said the older woman with kind eyes. The poor girl looks terrified. She is just nervous, Richard said. Stage fright. It happens to all performers. She is not a performer, the woman said. She is a cleaning lady. Tonight she is our entertainment, Richard said. He was enjoying this too much to stop now. Maria looked around desperately for help. Mrs. Henderson was standing near the back of the crowd. She looked worried but did not know what to do. All her guests were watching. She could not make a scene. Helen, the woman who was in charge of the workers, was nowhere to be seen. She was probably in the kitchen busy with other things. Sit down, honey, said the woman with sparkles in a fake sweet voice. Just try your best. We are not expecting miracles. The way she said it made Maria feel even worse. These people thought she was stupid. They thought she could not do anything except clean their houses. I should go back to work, Maria said quietly. I have other rooms to clean. The rooms can wait, Richard said firmly. This is more important. When will you ever get another chance to play a piano like this? He gestured at the old piano like it was something wonderful. But Maria could see the broken keys and the worn wood. She could see how sad and forgotten it was. Come on, said a young woman with blonde hair. Do not keep us waiting. We want to hear some music. Yeah, play something good, said a man with a red face. Something we can dance to. Everyone started talking at once, telling Maria what to play. They suggested children's songs and simple melodies. They talked about her like she was not even there. Maria closed her eyes and tried to think of a way out. But there was none. She was surrounded by rich people who thought this was funny. They wanted to watch her fail. She thought about her sick mother at home waiting for her to bring money for medicine. She thought about how much she needed this job. If she made Mrs. Henderson angry, she might lose the only work she had. "Please," Maria whispered. "I really do not know how to play." "Then why are you so scared?" Richard asked with mean eyes. "If you do not know how to play, then just bang on the keys. Make some noise. It will be fun." Maria realized that telling the truth was not working. These people did not care that she was scared. They did not care that she was embarrassed. They just wanted their entertainment. With trembling legs, Maria walked to the piano bench. Each step felt like it took forever. The crowd watched her every move. The bench was old and worn. The leather on top was cracked and faded. Maria sat down very slowly. The bench was the right height, but it felt strange and unfamiliar. "There you go," Richard said with fake encouragement. "You look like a natural." Maria put her hands in her lap and stared at the keys. There were so many of them. White keys and black keys in a pattern that went on and on. Some of the white keys were yellow with age. Some of the black keys had cracks in them. "Do not be shy," said the man with the mustache. "Just pick a key and press it." Maria lifted her right hand slowly. Her fingers were shaking so much she could barely control them. She reached toward the keys but stopped just before touching them. "What are you waiting for?" asked the woman with sparkles. "Christmas?" Everyone laughed. Maria felt her face turn red with shame. She pressed one key in the middle of the piano. A flat, sad note came out. It hung in the air for a moment before fading away. "That was beautiful," Richard said with fake amazement. "Do it again." Maria pressed the same key again. The same flat note came out. "Wonderful," said the young man with slicked back hair. "You have real talent." Everyone was laughing now. Maria realized they were making fun of her. They thought this was hilarious. "Try playing a song," suggested the blonde woman. "How about Happy Birthday?" "Or the alphabet song," said someone else. "She probably does not know any songs," said another person. Maria sat at the piano bench feeling smaller and smaller. These people were treating her like a joke, like something funny to laugh at. But as she sat there, something strange started to happen. The piano bench began to feel familiar under her. The height was right. The distance to the keys was right. Her hands, even though they were shaking, seemed to know where they belonged. "Come on," Richard said impatiently. "We do not have all night. Play something or get up and let someone else try." Maria closed her eyes for a moment. She tried to block out all the voices around her. She tried to forget about the people watching her and laughing at her. In the quiet of her mind, she heard something. A memory, a sound from long ago. Her grandmother's voice, gentle and patient. "Place your fingers like this, mija," her grandmother had said. "Feel the keys. Do not fight them. Let them sing." Maria had been 7 years old then. Her grandmother had an old upright piano in the tiny apartment where they lived. It was not beautiful like this one, but it worked, and her grandmother had taught her to play it. "Music is not about being perfect," her grandmother had said. "It is about telling a story with your heart." Maria opened her eyes. The crowd was still there, still watching, still waiting for her to make a fool of herself. But now she remembered something they did not know. She did know how to play piano. She had learned when she was little. Her grandmother had taught her for 3 years before she died. Maria had been good at it. Really good. She had loved it more than anything in the world, but that was 20 years ago. She had not touched a piano since her grandmother died. Her family was too poor to have a piano. She had forgotten everything about music when life became about working and surviving, until now. Maria placed her hands on the keys properly. Not just one finger, but all her fingers in the right position. The crowd noticed the change immediately. "Oh, look at that," said Richard with surprise. "She actually knows how to put her hands on the keys." "Maybe she does know something," said the woman with sparkles. Maria felt the keys under her fingers. They were cold and smooth. Some of them stuck a little when she pressed them, but they still worked. She tried to remember the first song her grandmother had taught her. It was a simple melody, but it was beautiful. She could almost hear her grandmother humming it. "Well," Richard said, "are you going to play or not?" Maria took a deep breath. She was still scared, but now she was also excited. She had not made music in 20 years. She had forgotten how much she missed it. Her fingers found the first note, then the second, then the third. And slowly, carefully, Maria began to play. But what came out of the old piano was not what anyone expected. Not even Maria herself. The song that emerged was not simple at all. It was complex and beautiful and sad. It was the song of a woman who had lost her dreams but never forgotten them. It was the song of a broken piano that still had music inside it. The crowd fell silent. Their laughter stopped. Their cruel comments died in their throats. Maria was no longer just a cleaning lady who did not know how to play piano. She was a musician who had been waiting 20 years to come home. Maria's fingers touched the keys, and suddenly everything changed. The broken piano that had been silent for 15 years started to sing again. The first notes that came out were soft and gentle. Maria played them carefully, testing each key to see which ones worked and which ones were broken. Her fingers moved slowly at first, like they were remembering an old dance they used to know. The crowd around her stopped talking. The cruel laughter died away. Everyone was watching Maria's hands move across the keys with surprise. "She actually knows how to play," whispered the woman with sparkles. Richard looked shocked. This was not what he had expected at all. He had wanted to embarrass Maria, but instead she was making beautiful music. Maria did not hear their whispers. She was lost in the music now. As her fingers found their way around the keyboard, memories came flooding back to her. She remembered sitting next to her grandmother on a small bench in front of an old upright piano. The apartment had been tiny and poor, but when her grandmother played, it felt like the most beautiful place in the world. "Feel the music in your heart first," her grandmother had told her. "Then let your fingers follow." That was what Maria was doing now. She was letting her heart remember what her mind had forgotten. The song she was playing was one her grandmother had taught her when she was 9 years old. It was called Clair de Lune by a composer named Debussy. Her grandmother had said it meant moonlight in French. "This song is about dreaming," her grandmother had explained. "It is about beautiful things that you can see but cannot touch, like moonlight on water." Maria had practiced that song for months until she could play it perfectly. It had been her favorite piece. She used to play it every night before going to bed. Now, 20 years later, her fingers still remembered every note. The piano was old and some keys did not work perfectly, but Maria found ways around the problems. When one key was broken, she used a different fingering. When a note was out of tune, she played it softer so it blended better with the other notes. The broken piano seemed to come alive under her touch. Even with its missing keys and flat notes, it was making music again. As Maria played, she began to relax. Her shoulders dropped. Her breathing became slower and deeper. The fear and embarrassment started to fade away. This felt right. This felt like coming home. The crowd around her was completely silent now. They had come expecting to laugh at a cleaning lady who could not play piano. Instead, they were hearing something beautiful and unexpected. Mrs. Henderson moved closer to the piano. She had tears in her eyes. This was her mother's piano, and it was singing again after 15 years of silence. "My God," she whispered to herself. "It sounds just like when my mother played it." The music filled the entire ballroom. The high ceiling made every note sound bigger and richer. The crystal chandelier seemed to sparkle in time with the melody. Other guests who had been in different parts of the house started coming to see what was happening. They followed the sound of piano music down the hallways and into the ballroom. Soon there were 50 people gathered around the old piano, listening to Maria play. But she did not notice them anymore. She was somewhere else, somewhere far away. She was back in her grandmother's tiny apartment. She was 9 years old again, and the world was full of possibilities. Music was her language, and she could speak it fluently. As the first song ended, Maria did not stop. Her fingers moved naturally into another piece. This one was by Chopin, a composer her grandmother had loved. Chopin understood sadness, her grandmother had said. He knew how to make sadness beautiful. The second song was more complicated than the first. It had fast runs of notes that danced up and down the keyboard. Even with the broken keys, Maria made it sound perfect. Her hands moved with confidence now. They remembered exactly where every note was supposed to be. Her fingers were strong and flexible, even after 20 years of cleaning houses instead of playing piano. As she played, Maria thought about her grandmother. She had been a wonderful woman who worked as a seamstress to support her family. But at night, after all the work was done, she would sit at her old piano and play. Music is the only thing that belongs completely to you, her grandmother had told her. No one can take it away. Not poverty, not sadness, not even death. Maria had not understood what that meant when she was young, but she understood it now. For 20 years, she had thought she had lost her music. She had thought it was gone forever, buried under years of hard work and worry, but it had been inside her all along, waiting. The second song ended, and without thinking, Maria started a third. This one was different from the others. It was not a famous classical piece. It was something her grandmother had written herself. Her grandmother had been more than just someone who played other people's music. She had been a composer, too. She wrote little songs about her life, about her dreams, about the people she loved. This song was about hope, about believing that good things could happen even when life was hard. Her grandmother had written it during a very difficult time, when Maria's grandfather was sick and they had no money for medicine. Sometimes when everything seems dark, her grandmother had said, music can be a candle. It cannot solve your problems, but it can give you light to see by. As Maria played her grandmother's song, she felt that light again. For the first time in years, she felt hope. The music seemed to touch everyone in the room. People who had been laughing and joking just minutes before were now quiet and thoughtful. Some had tears in their eyes. The woman with sparkles was not thinking about her expensive dress anymore. She was remembering her own grandmother, who had died when she was young. The man with the mustache was thinking about his daughter, who had wanted to learn piano, but he had been too busy with work to help her. Richard, who had started this whole thing as a cruel joke, was feeling ashamed. He had wanted to embarrass Maria, but instead she had shown him something beautiful that he had never experienced before. Mrs. Henderson was crying openly now. She had not heard her mother's piano played with such love and skill since her mother died. It was like having her mother back in the room again. As the third song ended, Maria sat quietly at the piano for a moment. Her hands rested on the keys, but she did not play anything else. The ballroom was completely silent. 50 people stood around an old broken piano, stunned by what they had just heard. Maria slowly lifted her hands from the keys and put them in her lap. The spell was broken. The music was over. She looked around at all the faces staring at her. They were not laughing anymore. They were not making cruel jokes. They were looking at her with respect and amazement. For the first time all evening, Maria felt proud instead of ashamed. She had found her music again. And in finding it, she had found herself. The silence in the ballroom was complete. No one moved. No one spoke. Everyone just stared at Maria sitting at the old piano. Maria looked at her hands resting on the keys. They looked the same as always. Rough from cleaning, dry from soap and chemicals. But just moments ago, those same hands had created something beautiful. She could not believe what had just happened. For 20 years, she had been just a cleaning lady. Someone people looked through instead of at, someone who was invisible. But now, 50 rich people were staring at her like they had never seen her before. Mrs. Henderson was the first person to speak. She walked slowly toward the piano, tears still running down her face. "That was incredible," she said softly. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Maria's voice was shaky when she answered. "My grandmother taught me when I was little, but I have not played in 20 years. 20 years. Mrs. Henderson could not believe it. "But you played like a professional musician." "My grandmother was very good," Maria said. "She taught me well." "What was her name?" Mrs. Henderson asked. "Rosa Martinez," Maria said. "She played piano at the church sometimes, and she gave lessons to neighborhood children for a little bit of money." Mrs. Henderson sat down on a chair next to the piano. "Rosa Martinez," she repeated. "I think I remember her. My mother mentioned her once. She said there was a woman in the old part of town who played beautifully but never got the chances she deserved." Maria nodded. "That sounds like my grandmother." The crowd was still silent, but they were listening to every word. These people were used to being the center of attention, but tonight a cleaning lady was the most interesting person in the room. "Why did you stop playing?" asked the older woman with kind eyes. Maria looked down at her hands again. "My grandmother died when I was 12. We could not afford to keep the piano. We had to sell it to pay for her funeral." The woman gasped. "How awful for you." "After that, there was no money for lessons. No piano to practice on. My mother worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. Music seemed like something for other people. People with money. The ballroom was so quiet that everyone could hear Maria's soft voice perfectly. I tried to keep playing in my head, Maria continued. I would remember the songs and play them on imaginary keys. But after a while I thought I'd forgotten everything. But you did not forget, Mrs. Henderson said. It was all still there? Yes, Maria said with wonder in her voice. It was all still there. Richard, who had been standing in the back of the crowd, slowly came forward. His face was red, but not from wine anymore. It was red from shame. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. I thought this would be funny. I did not know you could really play. Maria looked at him. She could have been angry. She could have said mean things back to him. But she did not feel angry anymore. She felt something else. Something like forgiveness. It is okay, she said. You could not have known. No, it is not okay, Richard said firmly. What I did was cruel. I am sorry. The young man with slicked back hair stepped forward too. We thought you were just a cleaning lady. I am a cleaning lady, Maria said simply. No, said Mrs. Henderson. You are a musician who cleans houses. Maria had never thought of it that way before. For 20 years she had defined herself by her job. She was Maria the cleaning lady. But maybe Mrs. Henderson was right. Maybe she was Maria the musician who happened to clean houses to survive. Play something else, said the blonde woman. Please. That was the most beautiful music I have ever heard. Yes, please, said several other people. Maria looked around at all the faces. They were not looking at her like she was entertainment anymore. They were looking at her like she was an artist. What would you like to hear? Maria asked. Play whatever you want, Mrs. Henderson said. Play what makes you happy, Maria thought for a moment. Then she smiled for the first time all evening. I will play something my grandmother wrote, she said. She called it Sunday Morning. She wrote it about the feeling of waking up on a day when you do not have to work, when you can just be happy to be alive. Maria placed her hands back on the keys. This time she was not scared. She was excited. The song that came out of the old piano was different from the others. It was lighter and more playful. It sounded like sunshine streaming through windows. It sounded like birds singing outside. It sounded like the feeling of stretching and yawning and being grateful for a new day. As she played, Maria began to sway slightly with the music. Her whole body was involved now, not just her hands. She had found her rhythm again. The broken keys did not matter anymore. The flat notes did not matter. The old piano was singing the song it was meant to sing, played by hands that understood how to bring out its best. The guests were mesmerized. Some of them started to sway with the music too. Others closed their eyes and just listened. Mrs. Henderson was thinking about her mother. She could almost see her sitting at this same piano, playing with the same love and passion that Maria was showing now. When the song ended, everyone burst into applause. Not polite applause like they gave at charity events. Real applause. Excited applause, more. Someone called out, "Yes, more," said someone else. Maria played song after song. Some were pieces by famous composers that her grandmother had taught her. Others were songs her grandmother had written herself. Each one was more beautiful than the last. With each song, Maria became more confident. Her shoulders straightened. Her head lifted higher. She stopped apologizing for the broken keys and started making them part of the music. The crowd grew bigger as word spread through the house. Servers stopped serving. Cooks came out of the kitchen. Everyone wanted to hear the cleaning lady who played like an angel. After an hour of music, Maria finally stopped. Her hands were tired, but her heart was full. The applause was thunderous. People were cheering and crying and smiling, all at the same time. That was amazing, said Mrs. Henderson. Absolutely amazing. I cannot believe you have been cleaning our houses all this time, said the woman with sparkles. You should be on stage somewhere. You should be teaching music, said the man with the mustache. You should be recording albums, said the young man with slicked back hair. Maria looked around at all these successful, wealthy people telling her what she should be doing with her life. 6 months ago, she would have laughed at the idea. But tonight, for the first time in 20 years, those dreams did not seem impossible. Maybe, she said quietly. Maybe someday. Not someday, Mrs. Henderson said firmly. Soon. Very soon. Maria did not know what that meant, but she could see something different in Mrs. Henderson's eyes. Something that looked like determination. The party was winding down now. Guests were starting to leave, but they all stopped to shake Maria's hand and tell her how wonderful her music was. As the last guest left, Maria began to pack up her cleaning supplies. But Mrs. Henderson stopped her. "Leave those," she said. "We need to talk." Maria sat back down at the piano bench. Mrs. Henderson sat beside her. "Maria," she said, "your life is about to change." Maria sat on the piano bench next to Mrs. Henderson in the now empty ballroom. The chandelier still sparkled overhead, but the room felt different. Quieter. More personal. "Mrs. Henderson," Maria said softly, "I should go home. My mother will be worried. She does not know where I am." "Call her," Mrs. Henderson said. "Tell her you will be a little late. We have important things to discuss." Maria used her old cell phone to call home. Her mother's voice was weak but happy to hear from her. "Mia, how was work today?" her mother asked. "Different, Mama," Maria said. "Very different. I will tell you about it when I get home." When Maria hung up, Mrs. Henderson was looking at the piano with thoughtful eyes. "Tell me about your grandmother," Mrs. Henderson said. "Tell me everything." Maria took a deep breath. No one had asked her about her grandmother in years. "Her name was Rosa Martinez," Maria began. "She came here from Mexico when she was very young. She worked during the day as a seamstress, but music was her real love." "How did she learn to play so well?" "She learned from her father back in Mexico. He played piano at the church in their village. When she came here, she brought nothing but a few pieces of sheet music that belonged to him." Mrs. Henderson listened carefully to every word. "She saved money for 3 years to buy an old upright piano," Maria continued. "It was not beautiful like this one, but it worked. She put it in our tiny apartment and it took up half the living room." "And she taught you?" "Yes. Every day after school I would sit next to her and practice. She was very patient with me. She said I had natural talent, but talent meant nothing without hard work." Maria smiled at the memory. "She made me practice scales for an hour every day. I hated it then, but now I understand why she made me do it." "What happened when she died?" Maria's smile faded. "Everything fell apart. My mother was working 3 jobs but still could not pay all the bills. The funeral cost so much money. We had to sell the piano to pay for it. That must have been heartbreaking." "It was," Maria said quietly. "It felt like we were selling part of my grandmother's soul. But we had no choice." Mrs. Henderson was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Did you ever try to find another piano to play?" "Sometimes I would go to the music store downtown and ask if I could just touch the keys. The owner was nice. He let me play sometimes when there were no customers. But that was only once or twice a month." "What about school? Did they have a music program?" Maria shook her head. "My school was very poor. No music program? No instruments. I tried to apply for a scholarship to the music conservatory when I was in high school, but what? But I had to work after school to help my mother pay rent. I could not practice enough to audition properly. And even if I had gotten a scholarship, we could not afford the other costs. Books, transportation, everything." Mrs. Henderson looked angry. "So you gave up your dreams because you were poor?" "I did not think of it as giving up," Maria said. "I thought of it as growing up. Music was something for children. Adults had to work and take care of their families." "That is not true," Mrs. Henderson said firmly. "Music is for everyone. At any age." "Maybe," Maria said. "But I had responsibilities. My mother needed help. When she got sick 2 years ago, I had to work even more hours." "Is that why you clean houses?" "Yes, I can set my own schedule. I can work around my mother's doctor appointments. It is not much money, but it is steady." Mrs. Henderson stood up and walked to the piano. She ran her fingers along the wood. "Maria, I want to tell you something about my mother," she said. "Something I have never told anyone." Maria waited quietly. "My mother was not always rich," Mrs. Henderson continued. "When she was young, her family was very poor. She worked in a factory during the day and took piano lessons at night with money she saved from skipping meals." Maria was surprised. She had always thought Mrs. Henderson's family had been wealthy for generations. She got her first chance to perform because someone heard her playing at a church social, just like what happened to you tonight. One person believed in her and that changed everything. "What happened?" "A music teacher heard her play and offered to give her free lessons. Then she met my father at a concert where she was performing. He was young and rich, but he fell in love with her music before he fell in love with her. Mrs. Henderson sat back down next to Maria. My mother always said that talent was not enough. You needed talent, hard work, and opportunity. She had the first two. She was lucky enough to get the third. That is a beautiful story, Maria said. The point is, Mrs. Henderson said, my mother would have recognized what I saw tonight. Real talent. The kind that cannot be taught. Maria felt her cheeks get warm. Mrs. Henderson, you are very kind, but nothing, Mrs. Henderson interrupted. What I saw tonight was extraordinary. You took a broken piano that has not been played in 15 years and made it sound like it belonged in Carnegie Hall. The piano just needed someone to play it with love, Maria said. Exactly, Mrs. Henderson said. And you knew how to do that because you are a real musician. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Mrs. Henderson asked, what do you want, Maria? If money was not a problem, if you did not have to worry about paying bills, what would you want to do with your life? Maria had not been asked that question in 20 years. She had to think about it. I would want to teach music to children, she said finally. Children whose families cannot afford lessons. Children like I was. Anything else? Maybe I would want to play concerts sometimes, small ones, in churches or community centers, places where people who cannot afford fancy concert halls could hear beautiful music. Mrs. Henderson smiled. Those are wonderful dreams, but they are just dreams, Maria said sadly. I'm 45 years old. I have no training, no degree, no connections in the music world. You have something better, Mrs. Henderson said. You have a gift. A gift does not pay for my mother's medicine. Mrs. Henderson stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at the garden for a long moment. Maria, she said finally, what if I told you that starting tomorrow, you would not have to worry about money anymore? What if I told you that you could focus completely on music? I would say that is impossible. Mrs. Henderson turned around with a big smile on her face. My dear, she said, tonight you made the impossible happen. You brought my mother's piano back to life. You gave me back a piece of her that I thought was lost forever. It was my pleasure, Maria said. And now, Mrs. Henderson said, it is my turn to give you something back. Maria looked confused. I do not understand. Mrs. Henderson walked back to the piano and placed her hand on top of it. This piano needs someone to love it and play it every day. Someone who understands what it is capable of. Someone like you. Mrs. Henderson, what are you saying? I am saying that starting tomorrow, this piano is yours to play whenever you want. And I am saying that I want to help you get back into music. Really back into music. Maria stared at her in shock. I cannot. Yes, you can, Mrs. Henderson said firmly. And you will. Maria felt tears starting in her eyes. Why would you do this for me? Mrs. Henderson smiled. Because my mother would have wanted me to. Because talent like yours should not be wasted. And because everyone deserves a chance to follow their dreams. Maria looked at the piano, then back at Mrs. Henderson. What exactly are you offering? Everything, Mrs. Henderson said. Music lessons to get you back in shape. A salary, so you do not have to worry about money. Help with your mother's medical bills. And when you are ready, connections to people who can help you perform again. Maria could not speak. This was too much to believe. There is just one condition, Mrs. Henderson said. What? You have to promise me that you will never give up on music again, no matter what happens. Maria looked at the piano that had changed her life in one evening. She thought about her grandmother, who had never given up on her dreams even when life was hard. I promise, she whispered. Mrs. Henderson smiled and opened her arms. Maria stood up and let herself be hugged by a woman who was no longer just her employer. She was her fairy godmother. 6 months later, Maria stood behind the heavy red curtains at the City Symphony Hall. She wore a long black dress that Mrs. Henderson had bought for her. Her hair was styled in an elegant way. Her rough hands had been softened with special creams, but inside, she was still the same Maria who had been scared to touch the broken piano that night. 5 minutes until showtime, called a man with a clipboard. Maria's heart was beating fast. In 5 minutes, she would walk onto the biggest stage in the city. She would sit at a perfect grand piano in front of 800 people. She would play the same songs that had changed her life 6 months ago. The month since that night at Mrs. Henderson's party had been like a dream. A wonderful, impossible dream. Mrs. Henderson had kept every promise she made. She hired the best piano teacher in the city to work with Maria. She paid for all of her mother's medical bills. She even bought Maria's mother a new apartment closer to the hospital. Most importantly, she had the old piano in her ballroom fixed and tuned. Now it sounded as beautiful as it looked, and Maria played it every day. At first, Maria had been nervous about accepting so much help. She was not used to people being kind to her without wanting something in return. "What do you want from me?" she had asked Mrs. Henderson. "I want you to be happy," Mrs. Henderson had answered. "I want you to use your gift." The piano teacher, Mr. Williams, was amazed at how quickly Maria improved. Her fingers remembered everything her grandmother had taught her. After just 2 months, she was playing better than students who had been taking lessons for years. "You have natural musicality," Mr. Williams told her. "That cannot be taught. It is either there or it is not. You have it." Word about Maria spread quickly through the city's music community. People talked about the cleaning lady who played like a professional. Music teachers came to hear her practice. Local musicians invited her to play with them. 3 months after the party, Maria got a phone call that changed everything. "Is this Maria Santos?" asked a woman with a professional voice. "Yes, this is Maria. My name is Jennifer Walsh. I am the artistic director of the City Symphony Orchestra. I heard about your performance at Catherine Henderson's party. I would like to meet with you." Maria almost dropped the phone. The City Symphony Orchestra was famous all over the country. They played with the best musicians in the world. "I think you have the wrong person," Maria said. "No, I have the right person," Jennifer Walsh said with a laugh. "Can you come to my office tomorrow?" The meeting was amazing. Jennifer Walsh was a kind woman who really understood music. She listened to Maria play several pieces. She asked about her background and her dreams. "I want to offer you something special," Jennifer Walsh said finally. "We have a concert in 3 months called Hidden Treasures. It features local musicians who have not had chances to perform before. Would you be interested in being our featured soloist?" Maria could not believe what she was hearing. "You want me to play with the symphony?" "I want you to play the Chopin Nocturne in E-flat major," Jennifer Walsh said. "The same piece you played that night at the party. Catherine Henderson told me it was the most beautiful performance she had ever heard. But I am not a professional musician," Maria said. "You are now," Jennifer Walsh said with a smile. The 3 months of preparation had been intense. Maria practiced 4 hours every day. She worked with the symphony conductor to make sure her timing was perfect. She learned to play with a full orchestra behind her. There were moments when she wanted to quit, when the pressure felt too big, when she remembered that she was just a cleaning lady who got lucky. But every time she felt scared, she thought about her grandmother. She thought about the little girl who used to practice scales for hours without complaining. She thought about the promise she had made to Mrs. Henderson. She would never give up on music again. Now, standing behind the curtain, Maria could hear the audience filling the concert hall. 800 people had bought tickets to hear her play. The concert was sold out. 2 minutes, called the man with the clipboard. Maria closed her eyes and took deep breaths. She thought about the broken piano where this all started. She thought about Mrs. Henderson's kindness. She thought about her mother who was sitting in the front row tonight, healthy and proud. Most of all, she thought about her grandmother. "I did it, Abuela," she whispered. "I kept the music alive." 1 minute. Maria walked to the edge of the curtain. She could see the beautiful concert hall filling with people. The orchestra was already on stage, tuning their instruments. In the front row, she saw Mrs. Henderson wearing a proud smile. Next to her sat Maria's mother, who had tears of joy in her eyes already. "Ladies and gentlemen," she heard the announcer say, "please welcome Maria Santos." The curtain opened. The lights were bright and warm. The audience clapped loudly as Maria walked across the stage to the piano. The piano was perfect. It was shiny and new and perfectly tuned. It was everything the broken piano in Mrs. Henderson's ballroom was not. But as Maria sat down at the bench and placed her hands on the keys, she thought about that old, damaged piano with love. It had been broken, but it had still been able to make beautiful music. Just like her. She looked out at the audience one more time. 800 faces looking at her with expectation and excitement. 6 months ago, she had been invisible. Tonight, she was the center of attention, but she was not nervous anymore. She was ready. Maria placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. The first notes of the Chopin Nocturne filled the concert hall. They were soft and gentle, just like they had been that night at the party. But now they were perfect notes played on a perfect piano. As she played, Maria thought about the journey that had brought her here. From a scared cleaning lady to a featured soloist with the City Symphony, it seemed impossible, but it was real. The music flowed through her fingers like water. Every note was exactly where it should be. The orchestra behind her provided a rich, warm background that made her piano sound even more beautiful. As the piece reached its climax, Maria felt something she had never felt before. Complete happiness. Complete peace. She was exactly where she belonged. The final notes faded into silence. For a moment, the concert hall was completely quiet. Then the audience exploded into applause. 800 people stood up and clapped and cheered. Some were crying. Some were shouting, "Bravo!" Maria stood up and bowed. The applause went on and on. She had never heard anything so beautiful in her life. She looked at Mrs. Henderson, who was clapping with tears streaming down her face. She looked at her mother, who looked healthier and happier than she had in years. The conductor came over and shook her hand. The orchestra members were clapping too. Maria felt like she was in a wonderful dream. After 5 minutes, the applause finally died down. Maria walked off the stage, but the audience called her back for 2 more bows. Backstage, she was surrounded by people congratulating her. Music critics wanted to interview her. Other musicians wanted to meet her. Everyone wanted to shake her hand, but the person Maria wanted to see most was Mrs. Henderson. "Catherine," Maria said when she found her. "Thank you. Thank you for everything." "No, thank you," Mrs. Henderson said, hugging her tightly. "You gave me back my mother's music. You showed me that beautiful things can happen when we help each other." Maria's mother came backstage too. She looked so proud that Maria thought her heart might burst. "Mija," her mother said in Spanish, "your grandmother would be so proud. She is watching from heaven tonight, I know it." As the evening wound down, Maria found herself alone for a moment in the empty concert hall. She walked back onto the stage and sat at the piano one more time. She played a soft, simple melody. One of the first songs her grandmother had taught her. As she played, she thought about how much her life had changed. 6 months ago, she had been cleaning other people's houses and worrying about money for medicine. Tonight, she was a professional musician with a bright future ahead of her. Jennifer Walsh had already offered her 3 more concerts with the symphony. A music school wanted her to teach students from poor families. A recording company was interested in making an album of her grandmother's compositions. But more than any of that, Maria had found herself again. She had found the part of her that had been sleeping for 20 years. The next morning, Maria woke up in her new apartment. She made coffee and sat at the small piano Mrs. Henderson had bought for her to practice on. She opened the newspaper and saw her picture on the front page. The headline read, "Local Woman's Musical Journey Inspires City." The article told her whole story, about growing up poor and having to give up music, about working as a cleaning lady for 20 years, about the night she played the broken piano and changed her life. Maria smiled as she read it. The article ended with a quote from her. "Music never really leaves you. Sometimes it just waits for the right moment to come back." As she finished reading, her phone rang. It was Mrs. Henderson. "Good morning, superstar," Mrs. Henderson said with a laugh. "Have you seen the newspaper?" "Yes, I just read it." "Well, get ready for more. I have had 50 phone calls this morning. Everyone wants to hear you play. You are famous now," Maria laughed. "I do not want to be famous. I just want to make music." "Then you will make music," Mrs. Henderson said. "Beautiful music for the rest of your life." After hanging up, Maria sat at